Hi, my name is Frank Schaefer. A few years ago, my son John and I wrote a bestseller called Keeping Faith, a father-son story about love in the United States Marine Corps, where we published some of the letters we had exchanged while John was in Marine boot camp. Soon after we worked on that project together, his being in the Marine Corps quit being something that he did after high school as a kind of a lark, not knowing what he wanted to study in college yet. And after 9/11, he went to war. He was deployed twice in Afghanistan, once in Iraq, honorably discharged after 5 years of service, went to the University of Chicago, graduated, now has 3 children that I do childcare for, the great pleasure of my life. But lying awake at night while John was being shot at gave me, to put it very mildly, a suspicion of things like being told by President Bush that there were weapons of mass destruction and we had to go into Iraq. Do you know, when John was in Afghanistan fighting, there are soldiers there right now, almost 20 years later, who weren't born yet. And so when I hear President Bush go and talk about how we had to be there, when I hear now about Trump telling us why we need to assassinate an Iranian general because there are threats against Americans that he's given no details for and there's no intelligence information on. As someone who had skin in the game while all my friends went shopping, because the kind of people I knew didn't have sons volunteering, I am leery of such claims. Weirdly, that book, after it became a bestseller, was used by a lot of Marines and other military families to explain to other people why their children had volunteered. It wasn't a political book. It wasn't pro-Republican or Democrat. It was just a father's story, a son's story. But when I hear Donald Trump go to my old evangelical friends, because I was raised as an evangelical Christian by a father who became a leader of the evangelical religious right that actually deformed the Republican Party to the point where it's now just part of the evangelical movement, or I should more accurately say, Trump has turned the evangelical movement into a personality cult. When he goes to Miami on Friday and he explains this assassination to an evangelical crowd of cheering, whooping parents and tells them, "We have God on our side," an actual quote, then where he belongs is in Iran as a mullah. Because when you start making these things into religious wars, you are playing the game of the 9/11 hijackers. You are playing the game of the Saudis who defend their corrupt, filthy royalty and murder journalists in the name of having God on their side. All he had to say is, "God is great," and he would have completed the circle, playing to an evangelical white personality cult that follows him and thinks that God is on our side because we have moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that God is on our side because Trump is making it okay to hate gay people, that God is on our side because we're putting women and children in cages on our border to protect white American nationalist Christians against the influx of brown voters who might turn the country towards Democrats, that we have God on our side so we have a right to gerrymander and to obstruct people from voting. My son served in the Marine Corps. He wasn't a big game hunter murdering endangered species around the world like Trump's sons. I lay awake for 2 nights while my son fought for his country because of a war that George Bush sent him to on false pretenses. Don't play patriotism with me, you draft-dodging, foot spurs, piece of crap, so-called commander-in-chief. I'm just glad that my son's not in the Marine Corps right now, being sent into combat by a lying fool. So whatever the real reason was that we assassinated this general, we do know this: Trump is a liar. Pence is a liar. We have no reason to believe his reasons for doing this any more than we do when he denies having been caught on tape talking about molesting a woman, than we do when he says he never wrote checks to a porn star, and we've seen copies of those checks, than we do when he says that he was a successful businessman and we know he went bankrupt 6 times. When he says he's not a racist, but he thought that the people in Charlottesville, there were some mighty fine people on both sides. So whatever other reason he sent people to war, the kid that actually pulled the trigger, probably sitting, controlling those drones in a trailer parked in Texas somewhere, or on Whitman Air Force Base, or wherever else he was, is serving a liar. And when that liar stands in front of an evangelical, white, nationalist, racist audience, and they cheer because he says, God is on my side, standing next to Paula White, who is a con artist, who is lucky she's not in prison, and getting blessed by these evangelical Zionists who would rather have him give information to the state of Israel on this attack than to our own Congress, because they don't believe that Democrats in Congress are real Americans, we're in trouble. Our commander-in-chief is no commander-in-chief. He's a commander of lies. He doesn't serve America. And now by religiousizing, if I may make up a word, the conflict by saying we had God on our side to a religious audience, that's exactly what they're screaming in the demonstrations in Tehran and Baghdad. Enough of this God on our side bullshit. Thank you. My name is Frank Schaefer.